So hello everyone, thank you for joining us. Marhaba, assalamu alaikum to all those who's joining us, community, faculty and students. I'm Abla Hassan. I'm an associate professor of practice of Arabic language and culture and the coordinator of the Arabic Studies program here at Nebraska University. I'm so honored. Today we have Dr. Omar Ramahi with us. Am I saying it right, Dr. Omar Ramahi or Ramahi?
Ramahi actually is very impressive.
Ramahi?
Yes.
Dr. Omar Ramahi, I'm so happy, honored. He's joining us today for the first event in Neighbors. I'm so thankful to all those who made this happen, who helped and supported and still supporting, in fact, Neighbors. I'm grateful to Digital Islamic Studies curriculum, a project, shared a project housed in Michigan University and funded by Mellon Foundation. I'm grateful to departments here at UNL, Modern Languages, Classics and Religious Studies, and the Honors Program. I'm grateful to Arabic Studies faculty who helped me, and they're with us today, Hassan Al-Mukharrig and Muhammad Zakaria Lagman. Through Neighbors, we will meet with distinguished experts on Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, and the Baha'i faith to learn from our guests and to get all our questions answered. The conversation itself is going to be recorded, but then I'm going to pause the record for the Q&A and to get questions from you. Let me start by introducing Dr. Omar Ramahi, who spent his childhood years between Palestine, Saudi Arabia, the USA, and Jordan. Dr. Ramahi received his Bachelor of Science degrees in Mathematics and Electrical and Computer Engineering from Oregon State University. And his PhD degree in Electrical and Computer Engineering from the University of Illinois in 1990. Currently, Professor Ramahi is a professor with the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, University of Waterloo, Canada. He has authored and co-authored over 400 journal and conference papers. In addition to so many prestigious academic awards, Dr. Ramahi has a broad interest in society, religion, and politics. During his university education, he was heavily active in students' organizations and founded several students' organizations related to politics and religion. He presented numerous talks at US university campuses and churches related to the politics of the Middle East and Islam. He publishes articles in local and international media on subjects related to the Middle East and Islam. And he's the author of Muslims' Greatest Challenge, Choosing Between Tradition and Islam. And I have the book here with me, a must-read book. Let me start by saying that, Dr. Ramahi. I'm so honored you're joining us for this conversation on what everyone needs to know about Islam. Let me start by how I got introduced to Dr. Ramahi through this book, which is a big deal. This semester, like I always do, we start with an activity first to class. I know some of my students will be smiling now. Like if, you know, your name, your hobbies, what you like in a class, what you don't like. And the question, the typical question, if stranded on an isolated island forever, what would you take with you? And some of my students mentioned one book, two books. One student told me she's going to be taking all, like her books, all her shelf of books. Let me share with you all that in my case, I'm going to be taking all my books, right? and probably different aspects of my personality. Maybe as a mother, I'll take a cooking book or cookie baking book or something like that. But as a believer, I'll be taking two books. I'll take the Quran because it will provide me a spiritual and moral guidance. And I'll take your book, Dr. Ramahi, with me because it's gonna tell me that it's okay for me to read the Quran for myself and by myself, and to interpret it for myself and to use it as a personal guidance against the traditional message we get all the time. And this is something you will find in this book. The contradiction in the traditionalist message when they ask Muslims and recommend for them to buy the Quran, and then they ask them, you know, you can have the Quran, you can read the Quran, or to be more specific, you can recite the Quran, but don't try to understand it for yourself. So therefore, Dr. Ramahi, I'll be taking your book with me. Hopefully I won't be in an isolated island for the rest of my life though, but your book will be with me. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramahi, for joining us today. Let me start with you with a very simple question. How can you define Islam? What makes someone a Muslim?
Sure. Dr. Hassan, first of all, thank you so much for this very, very kind invitation. I'm really, really touched, deeply humbled by the words that I heard from you. I know that coming from an academic means much more than coming from a journalist or from any other person. So I'm really humbled, and I hope that me, and as part of the human race and everyone else live up to the challenge that we have. There's a big challenge embodied in our creation, and we hope to live up to it. If one of you, all of these wonderful faces in front of me, and I'm so happy to see all of you, and if all of you think, and I know you are smart enough to be where you are right now, right? It's not easy to be at a university. Please keep in mind that it's a big responsibility. You know, just think of it. You know, if you're giving a tricycle and you make a mistake, you hurt yourself. If you're given a big Mercedes truck and you make a mistake, you can kill an entire family easily with your mistake. So the more we have, the more responsibility we have. It's not a privilege. Don't think that the smarter you are, the better you are. No, the smarter we are, hopefully, the more privilege, the more responsibility we have. So I am also, I want to say that just briefly that what I may say in today's 1 hour may sound different to especially the Muslims. And I think that to be a faithful person, and I'll get into definitions in a second, to be faithful implies that one should have humility. And I think that humility is not, I don't perceive humility as, you know, you're polite to the person next to you, or you offer him coffee, drink into your house. That's not humility, that's etiquette. You know, humility, I think, is to respect our opinions, to respect our ideas. We don't have to believe in it, but not to jump into quick conclusions without substance. In fact, one of the commandments that I have in my religion is not to fire your mouth, my mouth, without an understanding of what I am saying. This is as important as not to kill a person. Imagine how important this commandment is. So with that, I will say that the question is, what makes someone a Muslim? Is that correct, Dr. Hassan? How do I find? Okay, how can we define the faith we are representing? I want to go into some preliminaries that are really, really important to have a leveled playing field, so to speak. We use different words, different terms, but they don't mean the same, number one, and they don't mean the same to us, all of us here, okay? So the more sophisticated we are as humans, and I don't mean the more sophisticated meaning I dress nicely or I put the right nail polish at the right occasion. I don't mean sophistication by that. I mean, when the more sophistication implies, the more I classify, the more I am careful in classification. A fruit man, I'll give you just a very simple example quickly, and you'll see my point in a second. A man, let's say, or a woman who sells produce, they have lots of, let's say, fruits, and they go to the market to sell them. They call them fruits, but then later on, they recognize that fruits can be divided into different types, apples, mangoes, and whatnot. So when they recognize that fruits come in different subclasses, they have a higher advantage in the market. But then they realize that even apples have different types. For instance, I cannot tolerate some types of apples. I cannot at all. They're very sour. My mother, on the other hand, loves the sour apple. So the farmer, this produce man, the one who sells produce, the more he advances, or she advances in their field, the more they have a higher upper edge in the market. So they can penetrate different markets, different customers, and so forth. So my point is that classification is important. It's not a trivial thing. So I'm going to get to the point. The point is that faith is different from belief and is different from religion. Three things, okay? I'm very adamant to make a separation between them. And I'll tell you at the end of my presentation today that my religion has taught me to pay careful attention to words in particular, in two words. So the divine revelation, okay, the divine revelation in my religion, which is the message that came from a non-human source, okay, or a higher power, so to speak, this message, okay, has to be understood. Otherwise, why was it sent for me? Okay, if I'm not capable to understand it, there's no point. Why would God, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, why would God send something to me that I cannot comprehend? Okay, so three things: faith, religion, and what? And belief are different. Now, and don't think that I'm not trying to be philosophical. Please, I mean, I hate to be thought of as coming across as philosophical. Not at all. Not at all. You know, even if we talk philosophy should be for a purpose, right? Not something by itself. You know, we just look at it and marvel at it. It has to be for a person. And this comes from my engineering background. Everything has to be for a purpose. So to have faith in something is different, is different from believing in it, right? Very strictly. So Islam is strictly represented by the divine revelation, i.e. a book. I have a very nice production of this revelation here. Someone gave it to me from Egypt. It's very beautiful. This is what we call the divine revelation. It can come in different forms. Sometimes we have it published in a small form like this. So this is the divine, what we call the divine revelation. Some people refer to it as the Quran. Okay. Others refer to it as the Mus'haf. Today's talk, I'm not going to parse these different terms. If anybody is interested, you can contact me later, okay? Now, when I believe in something, when I have faith in something, I stick to it, whether some people may not like it or not, okay? As long as I'm not offensive to people. So this divine revelation, some people call it the Mus'haf, the Quran, some people call it the Kitab. The God within this book, he refers to it as the Kitab. Kitab means, guess what? Kitabs mean a Bible. with a small b. The origin of the word Bible is the same as kitab, meaning you bring things together. Bibliothèque in French comes from the same root as Bible, okay? Something that is authored and brought together to give you a concise message, okay? However, the beliefs, this is an important point, the beliefs are embedded within the religion. So the religion is not a belief, but the beliefs, plural, are embedded in this religion, okay? So very important, right? So why I say that, I'll come to the definition to directly answer the question. There are two tiers, okay? First tier, second tier. Now, I base the answer to this question is what defines a Muslim, what is Islam? I bring it from the divine revelation, nothing else. So that's why I warn you, you may find my presentation, my points different from other Muslims, okay? Because you, if you're not a Muslim and you're interested, or if you're a Muslim and you want to question what I'm saying, you have to ask me, where did you bring this from? Okay, how did you come up with it? Okay, so my reference is the book that I just showed you, which Muslims, all Muslims, believe it's a revelation, it's a divine revelation. So the first tier, there are two tiers, okay? The first one is to believe in Allah. Allah doesn't mean God. Sorry, Dr. Hassan, I don't mean to offend some of the things that you said earlier or offend you, but I'm trying to be very specific here. Allah is a name, okay? Allah is a name. The Jews have a name for the God that they worship. It's the same God, but there's a name. There's a difference between the word God. God implies deity, worship, okay? But Allah is a name. Nevertheless, okay? So the first tier is believing in Allah to be a Muslim and to do suitable deeds. Notice, suitable deeds, not good deeds. I'm very specific. I take my definition from the book, okay? Now, there's a difference between suitable deeds and good deeds. I hope many of you can notice that. For instance, a poor man might, or a poor woman, I have to be careful, might knock on my door at home and say, I need money, I'm helpless, can you give me some? Okay, I may give that person some money, and that person may go and buy liquor with it. What I've done, I've done something good, right? As far as I know, I've done something good, but I did not do something suitable. There's a difference, okay? Suitability is a concept that is stressed in the Mus'haf that I just showed you, the divine revelation. Amal salih, suitable deed. Now, who defines the suitable deed? There's a wide range. There's a lot of freedom, lots of latitude. You know, every society understands what's suitable for that society. And this is, this is not a surprise. In engineering, in my field, we think of so many things, but guess where the funding comes from? The funding comes from what is suitable for society. You know, that's why engineers make much more money than scientists, because they do what is suitable for society. Now, are engineers smarter than scientists? It's irrelevant, that question. I mean, you can be brilliant and go study sociology and you're incredibly smart, but you may not, I'm not saying sociology doesn't, I'm saying one may not be contributing to what is suitable in society. Very, very important concept. And the third, going back to the definition, believing in Allah, worshiping Him, that is, doing suitable deeds, and guess what? And being peaceful. Being peaceful. You don't harm people. You don't take their property. You don't kill. You don't transgress, okay? And believe in the latter day, which is specifically the day of accountability, okay? There's another tier. There's another tier, and I don't know if they're parallel or not. And I don't have the answers to everything I'm sharing with you. The other tier within the divine revelation is those who believe in Allah as a God worthy of worship, those who believe in the angels. And this is, don't try to personify things. Don't think of angels as animals with wings and things like that, okay? Please don't. They believe in the messengers that God has sent to humanity, and they believe in the earlier quote-unquote Bibles, literally speaking Bibles, kutub, books that were revealed, and the latter day. So one of them, either one of them, is sufficient to make the person a Muslim. This might be a surprise to some of you. Did we talk about prayer? Did we talk about pilgrimage? We didn't. So I am being very, very honest to the letter of the Mus'haf, precisely following it carefully. Okay. So now, why believing in these things are important? Why believing in these things are important? Because they cannot be proven. That's the concept of belief. You know, why should God frustrate us? Because they cannot be proven or disproven. You see, and this takes us from this schizophrenia that some of us have maybe dealt with, is that when they go to the university and do science, they're dealing with one set of structure of thinking, and then when they go to the mosque, the masjid rather, or the house of worship, then they have a different mindset. You see, I don't think this should be there. I really don't think so. We can elaborate on this later on, because, you know, if you are schizophrenic, you cannot produce something that is consistent. You cannot talk to your wife or spouse in one way and then go and talk to someone with different sets of principles. It doesn't work. So the question is why these things are beliefs. When I mentioned, you know why? Because they cannot be proven and they cannot be disproven. So it's up to you. You have the full freedom. And of course, that freedom is granted within my revelation, is that if you don't want to believe, don't worry. You know, go on your way. This is incredible. I call it tactfulness on the part of God. He's extremely tactful. You know, he doesn't force people, okay? And that brings us to a concept that I will discuss later on. But for now, just to close this thought, is that beliefs are fundamental to anything. Why? Okay, first of all, remember, how can you prove that Moses lived? How can you prove it? You have to believe in it. How can you prove that the Bible was sent by God? You either believe it or not believe it. It's your choice, right? How do you prove that God exists? Let's say at one level, well, there's nothing, God said there's nothing like me. You know, this personification is the thing that really ruined our thinking for many years. But no, okay. And the final thing is the latter day. Well, it hasn't come. It hasn't come yet. Now, is this something that is unique to religion? You know, I heard a lecture yesterday, one saying that when you go to the mosque, you use your heart. And he pointed to the pump, the blood pump. And he said, when you go to the university, you use your brain. I don't believe in that. I don't believe. That's not my religion. I use this when I go to the mosque, to the masjid, and when I go to the university. Both. I have to use this. And that's what my religion tells me. Okay? Now, to prove my point, in physics, are there any beliefs? Because some scientists, and I studied science, some scientists believe that we don't have that kind of nonsense. You know, we're very pragmatic, empirical based. That's not true. You know, there are two principles in physics: causality, causality and conservation of energy. Have they been proven before? No. Can you do physics without these two principles? You can't. Isn't that interesting? So back to my point is that my religion is not beliefs. It is based on beliefs. Okay, it is based on beliefs, and these beliefs are 5. That's it, 5. So the religion is not belief. If it was a belief, then there's no point of using my brain. Okay, so this, to conclude, this is a very high threshold. This, what I just defined, this is a very high threshold to establish universally who is a Muslim. Okay, and that concludes that Muslims belong to a loosely bound, not in an organizational way, okay, not in an organizational way, brotherhood, loosely bound brotherhood, but strongly bound in their connection to God. Okay, so this is the broader definition. Now, what's my proof? Well, Noah, Prophet Noah, we call him in Arabic, was a Muslim. That's what he declares. Abraham was a Muslim. Jesus was a Muslim. I had a discussion one time with a good friend who is a Christian. I told her, you know, I'm a Christian too. She said, no, you're not. I said, but I believe in everything you believe in. She said, no, but you believe in extra. I said, but that doesn't exclude the fact that I believe in what you believe in. She said, you don't believe in the Trinity, and I don't want to get into different religion. I said, but not all Christians believe in Trinity. So at least accept me as one of those Christians who don't believe in Trinity. So what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to bring us together, not for the sake of bringing us together because it's beautiful and cute and let's hug each other, but because we do have a lot of things in common. Now, those people who, you know, so this is the broader definition from my understanding. Not all Muslims believe in what I say, okay? Not all Muslims believe in what I say, but if you deal with Muslims and you want to find out more about the definition they give you, tell them what is your reference. Should I stop here? I took too much to answer this question, Doctor.
Very important, comprehensive answer, Dr. Omar. And I'm so happy you addressed not only the core beliefs according to the Quran, but also I was going to move to another question about the basic or the main and major misunderstandings about Islam as a religion. And you started with the big one. Can scientific people think, you know, can they be religious? What about this, you know, eternal debates, you know, between religion and science? I'm so happy you started with that. And this is general and I believe applies to all religions. But as Muslims, we feel all the time, as Islamic scholars and Muslims alike, we feel there is a long list of misunderstandings related to Islam, unique to Islam, specific to this religion, especially with the rise of Islamophobia in the West. So is there something specific you would like to add to that, like when it comes to misunderstandings concerning Islam, and what if you'd like to clarify some of them?
Sure.
I know
Sure.
you have a long list. I know it will take hours, but maybe
Sure.
what concerns you the most?
Sure. I'm not in the business of surprising people, but I have to speak my mind and my heart. Okay. I'm an academic through and through, and academics, you know, we don't do what medical doctors do, take a pledge, you know, the oath when they graduate, okay, to help everyone, independent whether he is a Jew, Christian, Baha'i, or anything, right? The famous oath that medical doctors do. But I think we need to, there's an oath implicit in our profession, is to tell the truth as we say, as we see it, the truth. When I say that, my perspective in regard to your question is that Islam is deeply misunderstood by many Muslims. Deeply misunderstood by many Muslims. And I struggle, by the way, I have very, very easy and comfortable conversations with many non-Muslims. And I had the pleasure of having amazing conversations with incredibly high achievers from the Christian faith, incredible high achievers. I had conversation with rabbis, okay? I had amazing conversations with Hindus, incredible conversations with Hindus. In fact, a Hindu colleague wrote one of the reviews on my book on Amazon, and it was a stunning review. You know, it wasn't praise, okay? Because what is common between us, I'm privileged to say that the people I associated with are searching for the truth. They're not trying to make a point. They're not trying to say, hey, you know, I am better. My prophet is better than you. In my opinion, that's all rubbish. It's sad that we have deteriorated into that perspective. You know, my prophet is so and so, therefore he's better than you. That's kind of the undertones or the sub, you know, narrative sometimes that we find ourselves in, because we try to prove. We're trying to prove that I am right and everyone else is wrong. We try to prove that. This is very dangerous. You know, instead of searching for the truth, we're lecturing to people what is the truth. And why should we search for the truth? It's obvious that we have no choice. I mean, we're not infinite in our wisdom, in our collective strength, in our thinking, in our brain. We're not. You know, any one of us, if we get the flu, forget about COVID. If we get the flu, you know, we forget about our mother, right? You know, we're just thinking about ourselves. We have fever, you know, we cannot tolerate ourselves. So imagine thinking about others, you know. That takes me to that core question, is that there are misunderstandings. And I dedicated, as I was talking to Professor Hassan earlier, more than 7 years of my life to address the contradictions that I saw in my own community. I'm not going to lecture to Zoroastrians or Jews or Christians or Hindus about the problems, and I'm sure there are problems, and I know there are problems in their communities, but they can talk about them. I have been dedicating a lot of serious time, and I paid the price, you know, to address the contradictions that I saw my fellow Muslims falling into. Now, I'm not saying that I'm right and he's right and she's wrong, and you know, I am saying that we Muslims, one of the big misconceptions is that we lost our reference. We lost our compass. Our compass is confused, okay? And I've been sharing some thoughts with a colleague who is a Christian, a strong Christian Protestant. And he shared amazing thoughts with me that I am having. Amazing, amazing. You know, when we open up honestly, we find amazing commonalities between us. So what I'm saying is that I am trying to clarify the misconceptions that Muslims have about Islam. The misconceptions that non-Muslims have about Islam in my world, in my effort, are not trivial. I cannot say they're not trivial, but they're secondary in the sense that when I talk about what I believe to be the truth, I talk to a Christian the exact way I talk to a Muslim. The exact way. I don't say, oh, he's not clean. He has to clean before he enters my masjid. I don't have that, okay? I don't have any preconceived notion, because the truth has to speak. When we teach physics, ladies and gents, you know that when we teach physics, do we discriminate based on anything? So my understanding is that the religion has to be speaking the reality, you know, the truth, not correct. What is true? Please notice, true, not correct. Correct is relative, truth is absolute, okay? Truth is absolute, correct is relative. So if I speak that, I need to speak to anyone the same way, the same way. So the biggest problem that the misconception, this is it, is that there is Islam embodied by the book that I showed you, okay? And there are parallel relations. Parallel relations. Is this phenomena unique to Muslims and Islam? Not at all. Look at Judaism. Look at Christianity, right? Remember, at one time, the church did not allow the translation of the Bible. Those who would translate the Bible, they would be what? Prosecuted by the church. Don't worry, I'm not picking on Christians. Guess what? Muslims have the same thing, but in a clever way. Isn't that interesting? Absolutely, they will allow you. In fact, they translate the Quran and they spread it all over the world. But when you want to discuss it and understand it, they say, no, you have to come through the clergy. Isn't that the same way? It's the same way, right? Jews, they do something similar. The rabbis are the only ones who can interpret things, okay? We can talk about interpretation later on at the right time, okay? But what I'm saying is that, not to make a long story, which is a long story, but we have to make it short, okay? Is that I don't discriminate between talking to a Muslim and the non-Muslim about the perception, the wrong perception that has been developed about my religion.
Thank you, Dr. Omar. Dr. Omar, let me ask you another nosy question. Is this Muslim's greatest challenge?
This is precisely. This is, when I started writing this book, I put questions. I just put question A, B, C, D, and I have an engineering mind. I was not born with this engineering mind. It was cultivated. The benefit that this engineering mind gave me is not to accept contradictions. I couldn't. You cannot accept contradictions if you want to build a bridge. It's simple. You cannot. There's one physics, not two physicses. Think about it. One physics, not two physicses. There's one equation that describes the movement of a particle when you push it, not two equations. Okay? So there is truth, there is a reality. The story of religion. So I started, when you pointed at the book, I found so many contradictions. I opened the book, I find something, and I see the practice differently. And then when I got more and more, and I read tons of books in Arabic, many of them are in Arabic, and thanks to the archives, online archives, all of them are available. The knowledge is not a monopoly anymore. It's very easy to find a 4th century manuscript on the web. And the nice thing about Arabic is that I can read manuscripts that were written 1400 years ago. By the way, if you have questions about Arabic, we can talk about it later. But I can read that. And so nobody can hide things from me. This kind of opened a huge, huge dimension for me. Huge dimension. And this contradiction, I kept at it because I cannot rest. You know what? If you have contradiction, God forbid, we have this expression, we say it a lot in Arabic, God forbid. If you have contradictions, you know what is the ultimate that can, God forbid, happen to any one of us? Suicide. Absolutely. Suicide is that you cannot reconcile things. So you end up taking your life. That's the ultimate, right? So in engineering, the equivalent of a suicide is that the bridge will crumble and many people will die. So you cannot have contradictions. There are contradictions and we have to address them. Now, remember, my religion tells me there's no compulsion in religion, okay? I find a God, my God, the God of the universe, as incredibly tactful. He said, you want to follow what I'm telling you? You will have rewards from me. You will have guidance. Guidance is key. And you have rewards from me. And guess what? And if you don't want, he never said, I will throw you in hellfire. Contrary to the parallel religion that I was told. You know what he says? You will be alone. Don't come and ask for anything, right? If you don't believe in something, don't go to that thing for any help later on when you need it. I don't want to personalize things, okay? Now, I just want to mention an interesting story about this tradition. I've been corresponding with a professor of Islamic studies in the US, a very prominent Islamic studies university. And he insisted, I was surprised, he insisted to label religion as the study of tradition, of Muslims' tradition. I was really shocked. Then I went back to the description of Islamic studies at some, if not the most prominent Islamic university, Islamic studies program in the US. Will not mention the name. Islamic textual tradition. Look at the phrase, Islamic textual tradition, okay? Why? Why don't we go to the source? You know, going to the source, for anyone who is interested in Islam, and this is my advice, go to the source, guess what? With courage. And by the way, and don't be intimidated by Arabs. I warn you, Arabs will intimidate you, okay? In fact, I learned about the terms of the Mus'haf more from non-Arabs because they looked at it in a mathematical way. Anyways, I don't want to deviate from the subject. I'll stop here.
Speaking about sources, so you already shared with us a lot of information, but a question that I usually get, when I share about Islam, what are other sources, safe sources, recommendations to go to? Like for people who want to know more, because sometimes it really gets confusing where to go to. Where should I start from in this journey, learning about this faith?
Yeah. I have a very simple answer to that. Very simple answer. The book that I showed you, the Mus'haf, is the source of Islam, period. Now, this Mus'haf...
I hate to interrupt, but I like when you're saying it's the source. It's not a source, which is the big deal.
It is the source. It is it. Now, I perceive that I had a philosophy that I developed. God created the universe, and I believe in that. But he did not create it in the way the parallel religion told us. The parallel religion told us that he brought a clay from here, he brought something from there, he put them together, and there popped a man. This popping up from nowhere does not exist in the Mus'haf. Does not exist at all. Okay? So the only source that I regret not spending time in since I was little is the Mus'haf. And this Mus'haf, by the way, has several things in it. I just want to not warn you, but caution you. If God created the atom, if God created the gold, the elements, helium, all of this, and if he's the same one who created this revelation, who revealed to us this book, then we have to understand that this is not a man or a woman made book. This is important to start with. This was not compiled by men. Okay. Now, something that we can discuss later if we have time, but not right now, is that why do I believe why do I believe that this book is from God? And I want to be frank with you. You know, we have to be frank. I mean, sometimes we talk about this as a luxury. I have to be frank with you. I better be frank. I have no choice but to be frank with you, right? Is that why should I believe in it, right? Why should I believe in it? I told you that there's 5 things I'm willing to believe in. I told you, I mentioned those because they're non-provable, non-disapprovable, okay? But why should I believe in the rest? If someone comes from Biden, Joe Biden, knocks on your door and tells you that I'm a messenger from Joe Biden, okay, that's a far-fetched, may never happen. Let's say the FBI knocks on your door, okay, they knocked on my door, of course, when as a Muslim and you live in the US, you expect the FBI to knock on your door. So you open the door and guess what they do? They show you, they prove to you that they're the FBI, right? They gave me their card. Here's my card. Here's the number. I mean, they were very professional, right? So they proved to me that they're bringing a message. Okay, this is an ugly example, but you can think of other good examples. You have to validate that the messenger, the message is from the one who sent the message, right? This is a challenge, isn't it? I mean, I don't want to challenge my Christian friends here as much as I want to challenge my Muslim friends or others, you know, the Prophet was not in front of me, Prophet Muhammad. I want to be frank and have a broad discussion. I talked to some Christian friends. I said, do you believe in the miracles of Jesus? He says, yes, I do. I said, have you seen them? He said, not. I said, so why do you believe them? He said, someone told me about them. I said, then you haven't seen them, right? Please be, for the Christians who are listening, please be patient. I'm not trying to shake anything. You know, I'm being very frank and broad in my discussion because I tell the Muslim, is the Prophet Muhammad in front of you? You know, he's not in front of you. So the point is that the message has to have validation inside of it. If I am not satisfied that this is a message, okay, from a higher power, okay, then why should I take it? Which means that there has to be a deliberate effort on our part, okay, to understand, to verify, to validate that this message is from a higher power, is a higher power. And this is something that, you know, some of us might grab it in a second. Okay, and it has nothing to do whether you have a PhD from MIT or not. You know, all of us have different experiences. You know, I don't want to personalize it too much, but this is an important example. My grandmother gave birth to 9 kids, and she lived a very, very miserable life, tough life. She was a migrant. She was forced to leave her house. You know, the experience she had in her life is not my experience, who are relatively more privileged, okay? So she saw things that I didn't see. She saw suffering. You know, when a woman gives birth, she sees something that the man doesn't see. Just an example, okay? So all of us are different, okay? A scientist, I saw things in science that my grandmother didn't see, right? So we have to search for that validation. And that is something important. That's not a minor thing. That's not a minor thing. Now, at the end of the day, you know, we have to be content. We have to be content with where we are, So bottom line, have the courage, you know, have the courage to I'm not proselytizing. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not a missionary. I'm not trying to, you know, to tell people, hey, come flock to my faith. No, there's so many Muslims to start with. We have to have them, you know, get their act together before, you know. But I'm saying if you're interested, have the courage to open the book. Okay. If you go, for instance, if you're interested in Islam, if you go to www.quran.com, you will find all the verses there. You just put the verse, let's say 2:36. but you find several translations. Okay, several translations. Guess what? Many of them are wrong. I can prove it. Absolutely, I can prove it. I discussed it extensively with people. Am I the most genius? No, I'm not the most genius. But you know that story, that famous little story. I had kids. We used to tell it to our kids, the emperor without clothes. Some of you probably heard that story. Some of us have the courage to say, wait a minute, you emperor have no clothes. Some of us are willing to say, look, this is wrong. Okay? And others are not, because others are very comfortable with that word that I cannot tolerate, tradition. Tradition is good to make falafel. I'm an Arab, we love falafel and kibbe and all of that. That's as far as tradition goes. But if I don't change, I will what? I will die. Not physically, because in life you have two things. In life there's two things. You either move forward or go backward. There's no such thing as staying where you are, because staying where you are is by definition going backward. Okay? So have the courage, just like if I want to know about Christianity, I really need to have the courage to go directly to the source. Okay? And translation, there's no such thing as translation. There's no such thing as translation. There's interpretation. Even if you want to translate a phrase from English to Arabic, you interpret it, then you translate it. Okay? I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Omar. This reminds me of some of my students from Women in the Quran are joining us today. Some of the activities is just comparing the verse in Arabic, since many of our students already minoring in Arabic studies and they know Arabic. And we compare it to the translation, a translation of an interpretation, assuming or giving the impression to the reader it's exactly the same text, while it's very sad to see that some additional meanings are added. Some of the original meanings are not there anymore. It's a changing the original text in all different ways while pretending only to provide a translation to it. So I would just agree with you on the importance of this point. We're getting out of time. I know our audience, many of them will want to ask you questions. I would like only to end with a personal touch, something you'd like to share with us. In Women in the Quran class, students pick one verse out of all the Quran to provide, a reflection on. So if I ask you a special prayer, song, poem, verse, piece of wisdom, anything you would like to share with us?
Sure.
We end with this, personal touch, and then I'm gonna pause the recording and get to questions from our audience today.
Sure. First of all, so thank you for asking me this question. It's a big responsibility. I'm not too old to give wisdom yet. No, don't worry. I'm joking. My hair is dyed, so it's all white. Anyways, but I want to say that there's something that is deeply held and deeply respected by, I would say, every single person in the world. Okay. This is not the venue to ask questions, and get answers, but I'll just pose it. Something that is deeply held by, I would say, everyone. Okay. And something that is so important that even you're willing, guess what, to sacrifice yourself for it. Imagine, what could it be, something that you would sacrifice yourself for? And the reality is that, yes, millions and millions and millions of people have sacrificed themselves for it. And that is very simple: freedom. Now, if a religion doesn't talk about freedom, I'm not interested in it, frankly. If a religion that put me into enslavement, even enslavement by God, even enslavement by the clergy. No, I'm not interested in it. And that's why I want to share with you a verse that I just recently did a discussion, a lecture about, which is very important. And it stemmed from my question, really, God forgot about freedom? Wow. Now the empires that evolved immediately after, little bit after the death of Prophet Muhammad, these empires, their biggest goal was to suppress the freedom of people, to suppress it, okay? So definitely freedom was an issue that was being challenged. Now, if we go to the Mus'haf, there's a verse 51, Surah, which is chapter 51, verse 56. Allah says, may I say it in Arabic first, and then I'll give you a minimalist. I call it a minimalist translation, okay? Minimalist. What I mean by that is that certain words, I keep them as is. I transliterate them. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. The loose translation, and the only reason I have created jinn and ins. Jinn is a different kind of creatures, let's leave it aside from them, but ins is humans, except for one thing. I created them, except for one thing. لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Okay, لِيَعْبُدُونَ. The classical translation of this is to worship me, okay? But I did extensive research on this, and I found out that this word does not mean to worship me. First of all, most translations, if not all, look at this, if not all, translate it as to worship me. The first problem with these translations, God didn't say to worship. Let's assume that Ya'budun means to worship for now. The first thing observation is that he did not say to worship me. He said to worship, period. Okay? Now there's a system. Why this verse is very important. There's a system of understanding the Mus'haf. And that system it starts from the understanding that the Mus'haf is not man's or woman's creation. The grammar, the language, the Arabic of the Mus'haf is something that the Arabs were never familiar with. Okay, if we use the style of the Mus'haf nowadays in a dictation, Arabic dictation course, they will flunk us. Okay, it's different. The meaning of words in the Mus'haf can be understood, this is the point, can be understood by classifying all the verses in the Mus'haf that had the same word in it. Okay, this is not a complex system. Actually, it's a very fruitful. I did that. It took a while, okay? So ya'budun here, that word that typically translated as to worship, it means to follow a system, to follow a system. This system, to follow it freely, meaning you either worship me freely or disobey me freely. It's a long discussion that how I came up with this, but I fully back it with all my research. The bottom line is that Allah stresses the importance of freedom, even freedom in obedience. You either obey him freely or you disobey him freely. And finally, a long verse, but it's complementary to this, is that he did not leave it for us to guess. How should we worship him if we want to worship him? Actually, he spelled it out. He spelled it out. And no time to go over these 10 points that he spelled out, but it will come as a delight to all of you, because these are things that are the values by which all of us live by. All of us, not a single person around the world disagrees with these values. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Omar. With this, we're ending the talk. Stay around for your questions. Before you leave, also please follow us, UNL, and we have a new YouTube channel, UNL Arabic, just UNL Arabic YouTube channel, UNL Arabic Facebook page, UNL Arabic Instagram page. And let's open the floor for questions after I pause the recording. One more time, so grateful for your time, Dr. Omar.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.